Journeys Through Spacetime by James Talisman. Chapter 6: Honor Destroyed by Unknown Dark Forces. Damion Province. The rain was coming down hard as the group of shadows silently ran through the forest on this pitch-dark night. Dressed in black from head to toe, these shadow warriors were extremely agile and flexible as they scurried through the thick forest terrain. With eyesight abilities matching the nocturnal animals that roamed the forest at night, the surrounding area was lit up for these warriors almost as if it were dusk instead of the middle of the night. The original objective for each of these special combatants was to remain invisible to their fellow clansmen, and to subdue their enemy as quickly as possible. Along with an array of various special tools to allow each one almost supernatural ability, each of these warriors had a special blow dart gun equipped with darts soaked in pinar sap. Taken from the Pinaris tree, the sap had the ability to render a full-grown adult unconscious if it entered the bloodstream. In essence, each loser in this game of hide-and-seek would be knocked out from the special sap. Little did any of these shadow warriors know what was soon in store for each one of them. As shadow warriors went, Tazon was a notch above the rest of his fellow clansmen. The rest of this elite community of warriors knew they would have to subdue Tazon first to have any chance of winning this game of stealth. An elaborate plan had been developed by the other clansmen to trap Tazon and defeat him, before he could use his amazing abilities to take out his opponents. Secretly, they had applied a special dye to the back of Tazon's black garment that could only be seen at night as a slight glow. Along with the special dye, each of the other warriors would signal each other through pre-rehearsed flute sounds that imitated the sound of the Koyato monkeys that roamed the forest at night. Meditating the afternoon before the competition began that night, Tazon saw the vision of a red-faced demon with piercing black eyes and horns protruding from its forehead. "There is a plot against you tonight. You must be aware of your fellow clansmen. Prepare for an attack from all of them at the same time." Coming out of the meditation, Tazon nodded to himself as he began to devise his own plan for that night. Once the clan leader signaled the start of the exercise, Tazon quickly sprinted away from the rest of his fellow shadow warriors and into the dark forest. After about 2 miles, he found the perfect Hirisho tree for his plan. He found a muddied shallow close to the tree and quickly dug out the mud with his Taurus wedge to create a shallow grave-size hole. With the pit complete, Tazon ascended the tall Hirisho tree with the skill of a Koyato monkey. At the top of the tree, Tazon spotted his fellow clansmen coming towards the area he had staged for his attack. "Good, the clues I left have been found," Tazon thought as he watched the other warriors approach his position. As flute sounds rang out through the forest, Tazon could see the others begin to circle in on his position. When the group was almost at the tree, he quickly slid down and jumped into the muddy hole. Covering himself with the dugout mud, he left only a small hole for his face. The rain was still coming down as Tazon closed his eyes to meditate on his next move, once the prey were all in position. While in this meditative state, Tazon could also sense the presence and position of all his fellow clansmen as they came in closer to where he lay buried in the mud. Once all his fellow warriors had surrounded him, Tazon jumped out of the muddy trap and began the sequence of moves he had rehearsed in his mind. Time slowed down in his mind as he pulled out his dart gun and began to systematically shoot each of his prey with the pinar sap-tipped darts. Before any of the others knew what had happened, they all felt the sting of the darts in their flesh. The powerful sap worked quickly in the bloodstream to render each target unconscious before they could even counter his attack. A short while later, Tazon strolled into base camp and went straight to the clan leader. The plan failed. "You will find them all under a tall Hirisho tree approximately 2 miles to the west." Nodding his head in acknowledgement, the clan leader replied, "You truly are a shinobi wizard. Welcome back, Master Tazon. The clan's most beautiful young Constants will see to all of your needs this night." Soon, 2 very lovely young ladies arrived and gestured for Tazon to follow them to the bathhouse. Hirisho Prefecture. Hirisho laid restless on the rice-filled mattress in the soldier berthing area as he played back the events that had occurred earlier that day. What was that bright light and voice I heard in my mind? And what is my next level training going to be? 2 more days of training this week, and then I can return to the mountains to think, Hirisho thought as he finally started to drift off to sleep. Training as one of Shogun Laishido's elite guards, Hirisho spent the next few days involved in training scenarios simulating an attack on the shogun. After the days of brutal training, he finally had a couple days of free time. Packing a few items, Hirisho once again headed up the trail towards Tazon Peak. He reached the base of the main peak just before dark. After building a small fire and eating the rice cakes he brought, he laid down on the ground to sleep under the stars. Hirisho once again started to ponder the words that had been uttered in his head just days before. Normally, he would get feelings and certain intuitive answers surrounding the questions he might have. As he lay there looking at the starry night sky, nothing came to him. Once sleep finally came, Hirisho began to dream. The dream became very vivid as he watched himself in combat, what could only be described as a black shadow. Each warrior faced off from each other, swords clanging as both combatants countered the other's strike attempts. This opponent was by far the most powerful and skilled that Hirisho had ever encountered. His muscles ached from the intense fighting. This shadow being seemed to be some kind of wizard, capable of moving without being seen. Without warning, Hirisho felt the stinging pain of a razor-sharp blade impaling his midsection from behind. With what seemed and felt so real, Hirisho startled from the dream that had turned into a nightmare. Gasping for breath and still feeling ghost pains in his abdomen, he jumped up from the ground as he grabbed for his weapon. Assuring himself it was just a nightmare, he found an Elysian tree to sit against for the remainder of the night. Still tired from the night before, Hirisho started to perform martial arts routines to help loosen his tired muscles and clear his mind for the meditations planned after breakfast. After the morning exercises, he hiked a short distance to a waterfall with a pool of water at its base. Spearing a couple fish from the pool, he prepared a small fire to cook his catch on. Almost finished with breakfast, Hirisho heard a sound coming from behind him. He quickly grabbed his sword and swung around to find an older man walking towards him. "So sorry I startled you," spoke the weathered old man as he continued to approach Hirisho. Feeling no danger, Hirisho lowered his weapon. "That is okay, sir. I did not sleep well last night. I guess I am a little disoriented. Can I get you some fish for breakfast?" Hirisho gestured for the old man to sit with him. The old man sat down by the fire. "Why thank you, young man, but I found and ate some wild berries just a short while ago." Looking at the pool of water, Hirisho thought to himself, "I wish the water was warm like the hot springs below. I could sure use a soak right now. Let's see what we can do about that." The old man rose and headed toward the pool of water. Once at the water's edge, the old man stood there for about a minute in what looked like meditation or prayer. He kneeled and put his hand in the water. Within seconds, steam started to come up off the water. The old man took off his clothes and entered the pool. "This water feels wonderful on the skin. Just like the hot springs everyone soaks in down below," said the old man after he had found a good place to sit down and soak. Hirisho looked at the old man and shook his head in disbelief. Due to the elevation, the water near the top of Tazon Peak and the surrounding mountains was cool, even in the middle of summer. He walked to the water and dipped his hand in to test the temperature. To his amazement, the water was indeed quite warm. "This will not last forever. You should enjoy it while you can," said the strange old man who could change the temperature of water. Hirisho undressed and entered the water. After finding a good place to sit, he enjoyed some of the most relaxing water he had ever encountered. The water seemed to tingle on his skin. It immediately relaxed and repaired his tired muscles. "Who and what are you?" Hirisho asked the old man as he sat in the magical water. You can call me Master Lyricus. I am just someone who travels the land to help where I can, replied the Elder Master. After a while of silence in the waterpool, both Hirisho and Master Lyricus rose to get dressed. To his surprise, Hirisho's clothes seemed to dry far quicker than he would have expected. Are you some kind of sorcerer? Hirisho asked the old man as they both walked back towards Hirisho's original campsite. I suppose some would think that. A better description would be Master of Ancient Wisdom, replied the Master. Why are you here now? Questioned Hirisho. I came to help you, of course, answered Master Lyricus. Who sent you? Asked Hirisho. Someone who is concerned for you, but I am unable to tell you who that is just yet, replied the old man. You mentioned not sleeping well last night. Did you perhaps have a bad dream? Hirisho looked at the old man with a puzzled look on his face. How did you know about the dream I had? That shadow figure in your dream is a powerful entity. You most likely conjured that dream as a warning to yourself, replied Master Lyricus. There are forces in play that underlie reality itself, and you are going to need to learn how they work to avoid possible physical death. That is what was meant by next-level training that you heard in your head a few days ago. This dream of death felt so real, but you are saying that I can change that? Asked Hirisho. That is correct, my young apprentice. Shall we begin? Master Lyricus motioned for Hirisho to come and sit down next to him. Once Hirisho sat down, the master began to speak. First things first. You must learn how to reach a peaceful state as quickly as possible. It is from this peaceful state that you can begin to become a part of all that is. I would like to start your training by showing you some meditation techniques that will allow you to drop all thoughts and truly become aware of the underlying universal substance of everything. Once you've obtained peace, you can begin to use the power of your thoughts to actually change the reality around you. Like what you did with the pool of water earlier? Yes, like the water earlier. As your wisdom grows, you will be able to do that and much more, exclaimed Master Lyricus. Before we begin, always remember that universal mind creates absolutely everything around us, and we are all a part of this universal consciousness. It is through this connection that we can obtain godlike powers. This connection is accomplished by emptying your mind and using your inner awareness to become one with universal mind. With that, Master Lyricus showed Hirisho how to use his conscious mind to drop all thoughts and put his mind in the void. Once Hirisho learned how to eliminate all the constant activity and thoughts running through his mind, he was able to feel a wonderful peace come over him that transcended anything he had ever experienced before. That feels incredible. I have never experienced such peace before, exclaimed Hirisho as he came out of the meditative state he had just been in. Excellent. You must continue to practice until you can enter this peaceful state at will and under any circumstance. The master looked into Hirisho's eyes before continuing. As you continue to practice, your body will give signs that you are indeed connecting with the powerful universal mind that is always a part of us. This powerful energetic substance that makes up everything will energize your body. You will most likely feel jolts of energy surging through you at first. These physical manifestations in your body will ensure you that you are on the right path. Getting up to leave, the Elder Master said, I must go for now. You should spend the rest of your time up here practicing these new meditation techniques until they become very natural for you. Master Lyricus headed off to the west. Hirisho watched him walk away and was amazed when he saw the old man just disappear a short distance up the trail. Damion Province. Entangled in the naked bodies of two lovely young women, Tazon slid out from under them. After donning a silk robe, he went to the training doshin to meditate and practice some martial arts katas. As Tazon wove deeper and deeper into a meditative trance, the familiar voice in his head returned. Yesterday's exercise has shown you the true nature of your clansman. They are not your brothers and sisters. They fear you because you are so different. It is time to take leadership of this clan. You must do this in a way where everyone will know you are the true leader." Tazon opened his eyes and nodded to himself before closing his eyes once more. After removing all thought from his mind to produce the peaceful state he needed, Tazon began to formulate a plan to take control of the Incubusian clan. Once the plan was constructed in Tazon's mind, he came out of his meditative state to begin practicing the deadly moves associated with the shinobi tradition. Removing his robe, Tazon began his training through an intricate series of hand and foot strikes against the Toroshian pole mounted in the doshin. Sweat began to glisten on the powerful and sinewy muscles of a naked body that had been toned to perfection through years of training. The agility and power Tazon displayed during the kartis resembled that of the wild black Tazonian mountain cats that roamed the upper regions of the Damion province. Tazon had been named after these almost mythical beasts due to his darker complexion and powerful demeanor even as a baby. After the hand and feet combat drills, Tazon pulled his favorite Shintozan sword from the wall where it hung and slowly removed the razor-sharp weapon from its sheath. Lightning-quick moves with the superb fighting instrument ensued as Tazon practiced various strikes and counter-strikes through the air in what could only be recognized as the finest display of sword skills ever witnessed. Even while practicing with no clothes, Tazon looked truly deadly as each powerful swing of the sword produced an eerie whistling sound when the weapon sliced through the air. Dressed now in the traditional black shinobi garment, Tazon walked out onto the Incubusian clan's main courtyard to have breakfast with his fellow clansmen. He found them all huddled together around clan leader, Hirisho. As Tazon approached closer to the group of shinobi warriors, the gathering broke up. Master Hirisho looked towards Tazon and said, "So good to see you, Master Tazon. I hope your evening went well." "It did indeed, Master. Thank you very much for the excellent companionship and food provided." "It is nothing. Your combat skills and stealth have earned you a new designation as one of my trusted lieutenants." As everyone began eating breakfast and talking amongst themselves, Master Hirisho was in deep contemplation. "In truth, I fear that Tazon is becoming too strong. There is something quite different about this man, but I cannot seem to figure out what that is. Even as leader of one of the most feared shinobi clans, Tazon's presence feels disturbing. I must find a way to vanquish Tazon before he corrupts the rest of the clan," thought Master Hirisho as he nibbled on the fish and rice in his bowl. The clan leader came back from his thoughts to find the rest of the group laughing loudly at a story Tazon told of a childhood experience before being adopted into the Incubusian clan at 10 years of age. Seeing great potential in Tazon, Hirisho and the rest of the elder clan leadership had decided to take the young orphan in and train him in the shinobi tradition. As the remaining elder, Master Hirisho knew he would have to do something soon about Tazon. This spawn of the devil is very clever and charming. I must act soon before it becomes impossible, thought Master Hirisho as he watched the other clansmen all but forget the previous night's experience and embrace their fellow brother clansmen regardless. For the rest of the day, the shinobi warriors performed various weapons training and practiced their climbing skills along the 50-foot rock wall at the east end of the compound. After a long day of training, Tazon asked his two new female friends to prepare a hot bath they could all share. Honored to serve and spend more time with this powerful shinobi, the young ladies quickly left to prepare for the evening's fun. Lying in the hot water while one of the pretty young women washed his back and the other massaged his feet, Tazon went through the plan once more in his mind. Soon, one of the younger apprentice trainees came to the bathhouse. After bowing deeply to Tazon, the apprentice said, "Excuse me, sir. Master Hirisho would like a word with you at the doshin." "Very well. Please tell the master I will finish here and be there shortly," replied Tazon. Tazon looked towards the naked women. "I'm so sorry, ladies, but duty calls. Perhaps we can continue later." He rose from the bath and began to get dressed. Arriving at the Doshan, Tazon saw the clan leader sitting in meditation. He waited silently as Master Hirisho finished and rose to greet him. "Thank you for coming so quickly, Master Tazon," spoke the Elder Master. "You honor me by your words, Master." "What can I do for you?" Tazon asked as they both bowed to each other in greeting. Walking to the south wall of the Doshan, Master Hirisho reached for a sword in an elaborately designed case of leather with velvet wrappings. This beautiful and powerful weapon has been part of the Incubusian clan for generations. Bestowed upon the original Incubusian clan leader over 200 years ago, this superb instrument has produced special powers for each clan leader who has wielded it, said Master Hirisho as he unsheathed the magnificent blade. "I have admired that sword since I was but a boy," remarked Tazon. He watched the Elder Master finish removing the sword from its case and place the case on the table. "So what does this mighty sword produce for you, Master?" "It shows me the true nature of anyone I think about," spoke Master Hirisho as he swung the razor-sharp sword in an arc towards Tazon's neck. As the blade swung violently at the spot where Tazon's neck should have been, Master Hirisho felt the presence of Tazon behind him, before feeling a very sharp pain in his back. Using a 6-inch tilic needle weapon, Tazon struck the Elder Master's Liberian nerve. After the vital nerve was severed with the needle's sharp point, Master Hirisho immediately dropped to the wooden floor of the Doshan completely paralyzed. As Master Hirisho looked at Tazon in shock, Tazon quickly produced another needle and plunged it into the clan leader's neck. This second needle had been soaked in a special mixture of herbs that, when combined in this manner, had the ability to stop the heart and lung function of its intended victim. Tazon waited patiently for the Elder Master to draw his last breath. He removed the ancient sword from the floor, resheathed the beautiful weapon, and placed it back in the wall mount where it was always kept. "Soon you will be mine," exclaimed Tazon to himself as he stared at the treasured Incubusian artifact. Once Tazon had secured the sword, he went back to Master Hirisho's body and kneeled. After centering himself with a quick meditation, he ran his hand over the tiny needle wound holes as they closed and disappeared. On his knees at the Elder Master's side, Tazon yelled out for his fellow clansmen. "Please come quickly, everyone. Something has happened to Master Hirisho." Rushing into the Doshan, the other shinobi warriors were shocked to see their master dead on the floor. "What happened here?" asked one of Master Hirisho's most trusted lieutenants. "I'm not sure, Tichin. Master Hirisho requested my presence. When I arrived, he was already lying on the floor," replied Tazon. Checking the deceased clan leader's body for any signs of struggle or wounds from a confrontation and finding nothing to indicate either, Tichin had to conclude that Tazon was telling the truth. Summoning 2 Counstons, Tichin told them to take Master Hirisho's body and begin preparations for the departure ceremony. Returning to his quarters, Tazon gazed upon the 2 beautiful Counstons laying in his bed. "So glad you 2 lovely stayed. We hoped you would be back soon," giggled one of the naked young ladies as Tazon removed his garments and slid into the bed. Soon all 3 were passionately entangled as giggles, laughter, and moans rang out from the room and out into the courtyard. As he walked back to his own quarters, Tichin heard all the noise from Tazon's quarters and thought to himself, "He shows no respect for Master Hirisho's departure." Just then, the young apprentice who first notified Tazon of Master Hirisho's request to meet, came up to Tichin and whispered, "I saw the whole thing. Master Tazon killed Master Hirisho." Whispering back to the young man, Tichin said, "That is excellent, my young companion. We will confront Tazon in front of everyone at tomorrow's breakfast meal. Now let us go back to my quarters to discuss this matter further." Putting his arm around the young man, Tichin led the young lover back to his quarters. After another night of ecstasy with his 2 new companions, Tazon strolled into the courtyard to find his fellow warriors huddled together once more. "Should I be concerned about all these clandestine meetings?" Tazon called out as he neared his fellow clansmen. "There is some suspicion surrounding Master Hirisho's death, and you are the most likely cause," spoke Tichin as he walked towards Tazon. "I believe your young friend can verify I was summoned by Master Hirisho," Tazon replied as he stopped to assess the situation. Pointing to the young apprentice, Tichin exclaimed, "Hirisho told us that he witnessed you killing Master Hirisho." Tazon had already sensed the young man's presence during the whole confrontation with the Elder Master. He knew it would only help with his plan to take over leadership of the clan, so he had not killed the young man the night before. "That is utter nonsense. I know you would want nothing less than to become the next clan leader. To try and use your young lover in your scheme is a shameful way for any shinobi warrior to achieve their desires," rebuked Tazon. Enraged at Tazon's attack on his honor and for exposing his relationship with Hirisho, Tichin charged towards Tazon with every intent to kill him. Tazon easily countered Tichin's attack, and knocked the shinobi warrior to the ground with a devastating kick to his head. Stunned from the kick, Tichin quickly got back to his feet, and pulled a Tanso knife from a hidden sheath on his waist as he prepared to plunge it into Tazon's heart. Once again, Tazon's deadly skills came out as he blocked the knife jab, twisted the blade from Tichin's grip, and quickly slit Tichin's throat with the razor-sharp blade. As blood began to pour from Tichin's neck, the young Hirisho came screaming towards Tazon. Within a split second, Tazon expertly flung the lethal blade at the apprentice's heart. Hirisho immediately fell to the ground with no further sounds or movement. As the two men lay dead on the ground, Tazon walked towards the remaining shinobi warriors and exclaimed loudly, "Unless there is anyone else who wishes to challenge my claim to leadership of the Incubusian clan, I pronounce myself your new master." Having again witnessed Tazon's incredible skills and power, the rest of the warriors bowed deeply in acknowledgement to their new leader. Tazon walked towards the doshin as he ordered the dead bodies to be disposed of. Before the bodies in the courtyard had been completely removed, a messenger rode up to the gate, requesting a meeting with the Incubusian clan leader. Hirisho Prefecture. Hirisho could barely sleep after returning to the training compound. The many meditations Hirisho performed after Master Lyricus disappeared into the mist had truly energized his mind and body. He could now reach a state of peace very quickly when he focused his awareness on the inner void of his mind. Along with how vibrant he now felt, Hirisho's mind was restless from the experiences from his dream, Master Lyricus, and the mysterious voices he heard in his mind just days before. "Something profound is happening with me and how I view the world now. I do not yet understand it all, but it feels right to me. I must continue this path and see where it leads," Hirisho thought to himself as he lay in his bunk. Hirisho woke the next morning to the sound of roosters crowing outside. After donning all his training gear, he headed out to meet up with the other guardsmen at the dining hall. After breakfast, Hirisho and his fellow soldiers assembled in the training courtyard for more weapons and defensive drills. For the rest of the week, mornings consisted of calisthenics, various hand-to-hand and weapon skills training, with the afternoons devoted to drills designed to ensure Shogun Laishido's security in the event of an attack. Already in great shape, Hirisho was amazed how even better his mind and body felt as he practiced and drilled over the next few days. Master Lyricus said I would create energy and power within as I meditated. "I can feel my vitality growing inside," he thought, as he easily countered the incoming wooden sword swing and immediately landed a powerful cut to his training partner's shoulder pads. Along with the increased vitality and agility Hirisho felt as he trained, he also felt his mind was soaking up the training lessons and drills with relative ease. In fact, even the instructors were impressed with Hirisho's progress as they watched him practice. "That one is bound for greatness if he continues with his training in this manner," remarked Commander Shisen to one of his lieutenants, while watching Hirisho dispatch yet another opponent in Bokken stick training. Finally, the grueling days of training had come to an end for now. To celebrate, the guardsmen agreed to meet after the evening meal and drink some rice wine together. As laughing and talking ensued among the soldiers, Hirisho asked some of his fellow combatants why they were drilling so much as of late. Rumor has it that the shogun's spies have found out that assassins might have been hired to kill Shogun Laishido, answered one of the soldiers. Hirisho had a lot of respect for Shogun Laishido, so this revelation did not sit well with the young warrior. I very much wanted to train more with Master Lyricus on the mountain top the next couple days, but I should not go far should an attack occur. I will go to the herbaceous tree on the other end of the western rice field in the morning and hopefully I can reach Master Lyricus with my inner thoughts, he contemplated, before bidding his fellow guardsmen good night. Rising early, Hirisho dressed and packed a light bag with food rations and a blanket. He felt the sun's warmth on his back as he walked west towards the huge herbaceous tree. The tree had been around for over 100 years, and it provided both shade and protection from the elements. Whenever Hirisho could not get up into the mountains, the herbaceous tree was his second favorite place for solitude. Once he arrived at the tree, Hirisho put down his bag and found a flat rock nearby to sit and meditate on. Sitting quietly with his eyes closed, Hirisho began to empty his mind of all thoughts and focused his awareness on the inner void of his mind. Soon a jolt of energy surged through Hirisho's body as the inner void of his mind began to shine brightly inside his head. Feeling totally at peace, he began to visualize Master Lyricus being there with him at this place of solitude. After a short while of meditating, Hirisho detected someone walking in his direction. Turning around from his perch on the rock, he saw Master Lyricus coming towards him as if he was almost floating through the air. Once Master Lyricus got to the rock, Hirisho asked the Elder Master, "Are you truly real, or are you just someone from my imagination?" True reality is a huge concept to consider. Is there any difference between what you perceive and what you imagine? "Perhaps this will help," replied Master Lyricus as he pinched Hirisho's arm. "That definitely felt real," exclaimed Hirisho. "Now that we have that out of the way, perhaps we can begin today's lessons." Walking away, the master gestured for Hirisho to join him by the herbaceous tree. When Hirisho got to the tree, he found the Elder Master staring at the huge tree with more branches than could be counted extending in all directions to form an almost perfect dome. "Is there something special about this tree?" Hirisho asked. "This tree resembles many others I have encountered across multiple worlds. In most places it is called the Tree of Life and Knowledge, and it represents many things," responded Master Lyricus. "I guess I picked a good spot to meditate at," remarked Hirisho. "That you did, my young apprentice," spoke the Elder Master as he continued to admire the beautiful tree for a while longer. "So how did the meditations go after I left last week?" asked Master Lyricus. Suspecting the master already knew the answer, Hirisho responded, "I continued to perform the meditations you taught until I could find peace instantly every time. As you indicated, my mind and body have been energized beyond anything I've known before. My training went very well this week. I believe the meditations helped with that." "That is excellent to hear. You are becoming a good student. I believe we should expand upon your initial training," spoke Master Lyricus. As with any other event or manifestation, time is also part of the infinite consciousness that makes up all things. Due to this similarity to everything else, time can be manipulated by the act of conscious thought. In truth, time can be sped up or slowed down through conscious effort. "That is amazing, Master. How is this done?" Hirisho asked as his mind began to contemplate this new concept. "You must once again reach the peaceful state of nothingness, and then direct your intention for faster or slower time. As long as you remain in this inner state of peace, you will experience time as you desire," explained the Elder Master. Wishing to experience this new abstract idea, Hirisho asked if he could attempt to slow time down in his mind. Master Lyricus nodded his approval. Hirisho began to center his mind in meditation. Once he had reached inner peace, Hirisho affirmed his intention to slow down time. Hirisho opened his eyes to a strange sight. Everything around him seemed to be moving in slow motion. He was amazed as he watched a hummingbird flying very slowly from one branch to the next in search of nectar in the flower blossoms that adorned the huge tree. Rotating his hands in front of his eyes, he saw each hand moving in slow arcs that produced multiple images of his hands and arms as they completed each circular motion. As his attention waned, Hirisho saw his hands moving at normal speed again. Hirisho looked at Master Lyricus with eyes wide. That was incredible. That was impressive, and you were able to achieve time control on your first try. You are picking up the concepts quickly. You should continue to practice this new skill until it becomes very natural for you, said Master Lyricus. I will, Master, replied a grateful and humble Hirisho as he began to center himself once more. Master Lyricus remained a few more hours to ensure Hirisho fully grasped the time control concept, and had made it a new part of his mental makeup of what was possible. As the Elder Master began to leave, Hirisho asked him, Master, you mentioned earlier that the herbaceous tree was represented on many worlds. What does that mean? That is a discussion for another time, my young trainee. I'll leave you with this thought: reality encompasses far more than you can imagine right now. Once you become enlightened, you will find there is not much you cannot experience or do, answered Master Lyricus. He started walking away and soon disappeared into the light of day. As darkness came over the valley, Hirisho ate some rice cakes and retired for the night under the huge herbaceous tree. Halfway through the night, he awoke to the sound of loud pounding coming from the artisan drums at the training compound. Grabbing his sword, Hirisho raced back towards the compound. We could be under attack, he thought as he ran across the rice field. Entering the sleeping quarters, Hirisho found 3 of his fellow guardsmen slain in their beds while they slept. I need to protect the shogun, he thought to himself, as he gathered various knife weapons and threw his bow and quiver over his back. He ran out the door and towards the shogun's main quarters at the south end of the training courtyard. Hirisho saw more dead bodies as he ran. Almost to the Supreme Commander's headquarters, he heard a twig crack from behind. Hirisho quickly centered himself and intended time to slow down. As before, time slowed down. Hirisho turned around in slow motion and saw the black figure swing a sword down towards his neck. Seeing everything in slow motion, Hirisho was able to counter the incoming enemy's sword with his own. He watched in his mind as his body and sword swung around and sliced through the assailant's neck. Still observing everything in slow motion, he saw a second attacker coming in from his left side. He pulled back his sword and watched as the sword drove into the second black-clothed enemy warrior's heart. As his eyes began to see in normal speed again, Hirisho spotted another black figure at the top of the south wall of the training courtyard, pulling back his bow to take a shot. Once again he quickly centered himself and in slow motion, pulled his bow and an arrow from the quiver on his back. He watched the arrow fly in perfect slow motion towards the shinobi warrior's heart. The would-be assassin dropped lifeless from the wall. Running closer to the shogun's quarters, Hirisho saw more dead bodies of his fellow soldiers. Shogun Laishido stood with his sword drawn by a couple dead shinobi assassins. Supreme Commander, are you okay? Asked Hirisho as he ran up to the shogun. I am indeed, young man. Thank you for taking care of that assassin on the wall. I was occupied with these 2 and did not see the 3rd archer in time, replied Shogun Laishido. As more guardsmen arrived, the shogun looked around at the carnage and solemnly shook his head. Our ranks were hit hard tonight by these assassins. We will find out who ordered this attack and provide proper retribution for this act of cowardliness. Walking back towards his quarters, Shogun Laishido stopped and bowed slightly towards Hirisho. You are Hanzo Hattori's son, and have brought great honor to your family this night. It was my honor, Supreme Commander. Hirisho bowed deeply to the shogun. Damion Province next day. Tazon was furious when he heard the news. You and the others have dishonored the Incubusian clan. I should end your life right now. He struck the lone survivor of the failed assassination attempt on Shogun Hirisho. I am so sorry, Master Tazon. One of the Shogun's guardsmen displayed incredible talent. He did things I've only ever before seen from you, said the shinobi warrior as he rubbed his face from intense pain. Nonsense. These guardsmen have never been trained in the shinobi warrior arts, and I find it unbelievable one could have acquired the training that I personally have had, shouted Tazon. Tazon started to walk away. I need to go and meditate on this matter. Update Hashin on all details of the attack and leave nothing out. The clan leader headed towards the Doshin to perform some katas to center his mind before meditating. Entering the Doshin, Tazon pulled the Incubusian clan sword off the wall and once again studied every detail of the magnificent weapon. It had only been a little over a week since he had first admired the sword so closely. During his first time with the sword, a messenger was brought to him to discuss using the Incubusian clan's unique talents. After all details had been considered and a hefty fee paid, Tazon accepted the assignment from Shogun Bushido's messenger. Now, over a week later, Tazon's anger at the unsuccessful assassination attempt made him unsettled, and that angered him even more. After placing the sword back on the wall, Tazon changed into his training garment and began the katas to help calm his mind. Pounding with hand and feet against the hard wooden training pole for about 30 minutes dissolved Tazon's anger. He sat and began meditating on how to proceed. Closing his eyes, Tazon focused his inner awareness on the void of his mind. Once his mind reached the vortex and he was at peace, Tazon pondered the situation. Who is this strange warrior? How did he obtain such skills? I may need to perform this task myself. Still in a meditative trance, Tazon heard the familiar voice in his head speak the words, "This one you think about has been receiving special training from a powerful and ancient master. This warrior has special talents but is not indestructible. Then I must go and destroy him and the shogun," thought Tazon to the voice in his head. You will eventually bring death to this soldier and his shogun, but first you need to disgrace this guardsman and his family. Let us go over the plan, spoke the voice in Tazon's head. Hirisho Prefecture. Hirisho was tired, sad, and angry after spending the last few days helping to remove and bury all the dead bodies. He knew he needed to return to a peaceful state, but his emotions and lack of the usual inner guidance was making it extremely hard to meditate and reach the inner void of his mind. I must dampen all these bad thoughts if I ever hope to reach peace again. I so wish Master Lyricus was here to help me calm my mind, thought Hirisho as he lay awake in his bunk. Mentally and physically exhausted, Hirisho finally dozed off. His sleep was restless as he began to dream of the black shadowed figure again. As swords clashed against each other in this battle for his life, he once again felt a very dark presence from this shadow opponent. At one point, the black shadow figure's hood came off to reveal the demonic features he remembered from nightmares as a child. Just like this current nightmare, the demon from his childhood seemed so real. His face was fiery red with teeth that resembled those from the huge mountain lions he saw in drawings from his village as a child. The eyes of this demon were as black as a moonless night, and horns protruded from each side of its forehead. The demon looked at Hirisho. You and your family will pay dearly for causing me disgrace and for the death of my clansmen. Hearing those words made Hirisho awake from his dream to find a dark figure hovering above him. He quickly tried to get up from the rice mattress to defend himself, but the black shadow jammed a cloth soaked in a liquid, with an extremely strong and bitter smell over his mouth and nose. As these offensive vapors traveled up Hirisho's nostrils and into his body, he began to feel his mind drift into darkness as his body went limp. Earlier. Taking a small group of shinobi warriors with him, Tazon and his clansmen rode from their remote compound to Shogun Hirisho's complex. After arriving at the compound, the shadow warriors spent the rest of the afternoon spying on the guardsmen and their shogun. Through conversations heard between the guardsmen, Tazon was able to discern who was responsible for most of the deaths of his fellow clansmen. Once identified, he watched this warrior closely for the rest of the day as he prepared for his attack that night. Eventually dusk came and then night. Tazon waited until close to midnight before entering the barracks where the guardsmen slept. Quickly, Tazon shot the 4 other guardsmen sleeping in the same barracks as Hirisho with pinar sap-tipped darts. With all the others unconscious, Tazon silently approached Hirisho's bunk for his planned attack. Now at Hirisho's side, Tazon quickly centered himself to reach the inner void of his mind. Using the ancient art of Kaishin mind telepathy taught to him by his master, Tazon created visualizations from his own mind to invade Hirisho's mind. He implanted the demonic image of the Shadow Warrior into Hirisho's mind as he slept. Back to the present. With Hirisho unconscious from the Devilian flower's strong-smelling nectar, Tazon grabbed Hirisho's bow and arrows and told 2 of his shinobi warriors to carry Hirisho out of the barracks and towards Shogun Laishido's quarters. Once at the shogun's dwelling, Tazon quickly scaled the wall at the rear of the sleeping quarters. Before they knew what had occurred, Tazon shot the 2 guardsmen on watch with arrows from Hirisho's quiver. The shinobi warriors lifted Hirisho's unconscious body over the wall and onto the grounds behind the shogun's sleeping quarters. Taking a special needle from his pouch, Tazon jabbed the needle into Hirisho's neck before quickly climbing back over the wall with his fellow shinobi warriors. The pain from the needle poke made Hirisho awake from the blackness of his mind. While he was now partially awake, the mixture of herbs the needle tip had been soaked with was now fully in Hirisho's bloodstream. This specialized substance created hallucinations in the mind of its victims. Rising from the ground, Hirisho was very groggy and disoriented. Seeing his bow and quiver on the ground, Hirisho tried to hurriedly reach down and grab his weapons. By this time, the sounds outside his sleeping quarters woke Shogun Laishido. Quickly rising from his bed, the shogun slung his bow and quiver over his shoulder and grabbed his sword to confront whatever was making the sounds outside his dwelling. Coming out of the back of his sleeping quarters, Shogun Laishido made out the figure of the special warrior who had saved his life just days before, with bow and arrow in hand and aimed at his chest. With the effects of both the drug in his bloodstream and Kaishin mind projections coming from Tazon, Hirisho could only see the demon shadow figure in front of him. Still groggy from all the drugs in his system, Hirisho centered himself as best as he could before taking aim and shooting the deadly arrow at the demon before him. Fortunately, Shogun Laishido anticipated the shot and was able to move just enough to avoid the fatal shot to his heart, as the razor-sharp arrow sliced across his side. Not wanting to kill the guardsman who had saved his life, the shogun quickly notched an arrow and fired a non-lethal shot into Hirisho's shoulder. The impact of the arrow made Hirisho reel from the blow and fall to the ground. Other guardsmen arrived at the scene and removed Hirisho's weapons. Walking up to Hirisho, who was now being shackled by his fellow guardsmen, Shogun Laishido shook his head in disbelief. "Why would you do this? Your father will be as disappointed as I am when he hears of this." Disappointed that Shogun Laishido was not dead yet, Tazon was happy to see that the guardsman who had dishonored him was now dishonored himself. Riding off into the night, Tazon and his fellow warriors headed back to the Incubusian clan's remote compound. Back at the shogun's training complex, the soldiers searched Hirisho's barracks and found a small bag of gold coins stashed under his mattress. Further investigation revealed that the 2 guardsmen who had been killed outside the shogun's residence were shot with arrows with the same markings that were on arrows in Hirisho's quiver, including the arrow that had barely missed killing Shogun Laishido. Sitting in the cell, Hirisho frantically tried to understand how and why this terrible turn of events had happened. "I cannot make any sense of this. I would never harm Shogun Laishido. The black shadow demon that was in my mind must be responsible somehow." The next day Hirisho was taken from his cell and presented in front of Shogun Laishido. Still shaken and angry from the previous night's attack on his life yet again, the shogun looked at Hirisho. I still do not understand why you would attempt to assassinate me and dishonor yourself for a few gold coins. I should kill you right now, but I owe you a life for what you did just a few nights ago. For your crimes I now pronounce you a man with no honor, and your family will also share in your shame. You are to leave this place now with only the clothes on your back, and never again enjoy the respect given to men of honor." With that, Hirisho's shackles were removed and he was escorted from the courtage. Totally devastated, wounded and bewildered, Hirisho walked aimlessly towards the mountains that had brought so much comfort to him before all these recent events.